Damn, this hits me every time. It feels like hand orgasm. This is the Redmi Note 11 Pro, and here is the Samsung Galaxy A52. I'm going to answer one of the most debated questions right now on the internet. Which of the smartphones is better and which should you buy? And so without taking much of your time, yo guys, let's get started. In this comparison is 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage on the Samsung Galaxy A52 and 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage on the Redmi Note 11 Pro. But before I move on, let's get something clear about virtual RAMs. Each of these devices has a means of expanding the RAM by using the internal storage. For the Redmi here, you get an additional 3 gigs of RAM, bringing it up to 11 gigs in total, while the Samsung on here can increase its virtual RAM by 4 gigs, bringing it up to 10 gigs in total. I'll be having a video soon on mobile phones virtual RAM. With that out of the way, let's talk about the design and build quality from each of the smartphones. These two smartphones are actually huge for one-handed use. These are quite similar in size, but if you really want to get down to the dimensions, then the Samsung Galaxy A52 would be the slightly smaller and more comfortable smartphone to handle in terms of size. And the major question we are going to answer in this video is, does size really matter? Come on with it, guys. You guys have dirty minds. Despite having a flat rear as the Redmi Note 11 Pro and also being taller, the A52 has this slightly curved edge to it, making it more comfortable to handle, at least for me. Now, moving over to the ports and I/O, you would notice that both of the smartphones retain the headphone jack, although in different positions or locations. Top for the Redmi and bottom, as I love it, for the Samsung Galaxy A52. And you have stereo speakers, USB-C ports, side-mounted fingerprint scanner for the Redmi Note 11 Pro. Of course, that's the faster and more reliable than the in-display fingerprint scanner found on the Samsung Galaxy A52. You also have a hybrid dual SIM tray on both of the smartphones, either dual SIMs or SIM and memory expansion. Either way, the one place where the Redmi takes the lead would be the additional IR blaster at the top to control your electronics. While we have plastic at the rear of the Samsung, you get a glass rear for the Redmi Note 11 Pro. In as much as design is a thing of personal preference, I'd give it to Samsung for the build quality as it checks off lots of boxes for me. One being this plastic matte rear, which not only saves you from the smudges and those fingerprints stains on the smartphone, but also secondly the fact that it's IP67 rated, which can survive being dipped in 1 meter of water for about 30 minutes against the IP53, which is just dust and water splash resistant. One aspect a lot of people might not talk about in terms of mid-range devices would be the haptics and vibrations. Damn, this hits me every time. It feels like hand orgasm. Don't get me wrong, these are not the flagship level vibrations, but for some reason I prefer how the vibration motor on the Samsung Galaxy A52 has this buzz and delay to it, unlike the punchy and not delayed knob you get from the Redmi Note 11 Pro. It actually does feel like the Redmi device here is trying to copy the big boys, but the knob doesn't get evenly distributed on this body or chassis you get from the smartphone. And so the A52's approach to this here makes more sense with the buzz approach, and the first level for vibration intensity feels best on the Samsung Galaxy A52. I wish I could translate this over video, but just take my word for it. In terms of the audio quality, both have this stereo or dual speaker configuration, bottom and top firing speakers. The Samsung uses the earpiece at the top for this second speaker. The one thing I noticed about the sound coming off these devices is that at max volume, the Galaxy A52 gives you this cleaner sounding audio and is also slightly thicker at the low ends, and definitely one I would pick amongst these two audio profiles. Now for loudness, they are about the same in terms of the decibels, and you just get the cleaner audio from the Samsung Galaxy A52. Aside from having an AMOLED panel 6.67-inch in size from the Redmi Note 11 Pro, you get a 6.5-inch AMOLED panel on the Samsung Galaxy A52, and both of them at full HD Plus in resolution. I can assure you that you really wouldn't go wrong with either of these displays, but there are some really good things you might notice about the Redmi Note 11 Pro's display. Aside from the fact that it has 120Hz refresh rate, which is smoother than the 90Hz you get from the Sami here. I lied when I said you get the same color quality from this smartphone's display. Well, technically I didn't. I said the same quality, but that's not the point. If you take a really keen look at these displays side by side, you would notice that the colors tend to pop more on the Redmi Note 11 Pro. And this was consistent while I cycled through the display color profiles on the smartphones. Now the Samsung has a vivid and natural screen mode, while the Redmi Note 11 Pro gives you this vivid, saturated and standard mode to choose from. From my test here, the best for both smartphones would be the vivid setting. And while in the setting for both of the smartphones, the Redmi Note 11 Pro has this more punch to the colors, and this is slight but there and I love it. So for displays, they are really similar, but the Redmi gives you a slightly larger panel, more refresh rates, a little more punchy color, and a noticeably brighter display under direct sunlight. I mean, you can't miss that difference in that case. Here's your winner in terms of the display, the Redmi Note 11 Pro. And yeah, both of the smartphones have the Corning Gorilla Glass 5 protection. So software. One UI 3.1 on Android 11 for the Galaxy A52 and MIUI 13 on Android 11 on the Note 11 Pro. Now, which is better? I love both of these skins and that's a matter of personal preference again. I'm not gonna lie, Samsung's One UI keeps grabbing my attention the most with every detail in the UI. You know, the reachability for a great user experience. Since we're talking about software here, Samsung has promised 3 years of major OS updates and 4 years of security patch and updates on the smartphone. And also Redmi promises you up to 3 years of software updates too. So you should be covered in terms of the software experience with these smartphones. Both smartphones perform pretty decently for the mid-range tier, with the Redmi coming in with the Helio G96 processor, which is similar to last year's Helio G95. And the Galaxy on here gives you the Snapdragon 720G chipset. The Snapdragon no doubt has the better GPU, CPU and battery efficiency, and although benchmark scores don't tell the whole story, they are able to give you an idea of what to expect. In terms of single core score, you get the better score from the Samsung Galaxy A52 and a better rating for the Redmi as far as multi-core score is considered. I'll definitely pick the Snapdragon in this tight scenario anyway, but then these are close enough with not that much difference for day-to-day activities. Both multitask efficiently and are great smartphones for what they are, but the A52 wins anyway. Now cameras. For sensor numbers, this might seem great. That's the Redmi Note 11 Pro. You get 108 megapixel main sensor, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro and 2 megapixel depth sensor, while the A52 gives you a 64 megapixel main sensor, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel depth sensor and a 5 megapixel macro lens. Now the selfie cameras on here are 60 megapixel for the Note 11 Pro and 32 megapixel from the Samsung. You must have realized that just the main sensor has the larger number from the Redmi, but the A52 crushes it in all other sensor sizes. Now down to the photos these smartphones both take. I took tons of photos and really looked down for the differences and details, and it boils down to two things. One, the photos from the Samsung Galaxy A52 have this custom and more saturated look than the flatter and less saturated photos you get from the Redmi Note 11 Pro. This to a lot of people would mean that you can likely post the photos from the Samsung Galaxy A52 to your social media feeds without having to do this additional edits on the phone, which you need to do to achieve the same look on the Redmi Note 11 Pro, and which is not the case with the Redmi on here. But as far as what gets closer to the natural look from the cameras, the Redmi would win here. And secondly, you get more details from the photos on the Redmi Note 11 Pro's main camera, all thanks to the more pixel count or number from the main sensor. You can easily see this when you zoom into the photos, and Redmi would retain more sharpness in the photos anytime you cropped in. But when it comes to things like the front-facing camera or the ultra-wide, the clear winner here is the Galaxy A52. You get better saturation and better looking photos also. On the video side of things, the Galaxy A52 clearly takes the lead. You can shoot from both the front and the rear cameras on the Samsung Galaxy A52 at up to 4K 30 FPS, but the Redmi here maxes out at 1080p for both the front and the rear cameras. But the colors are just like I mentioned earlier in terms of the photos. You get this more saturation from the Samsung Galaxy A52 and less saturation but more details from the video in this Redmi Note 11 Pro. And that's when you shoot in 1080p from both of the smartphones. Now, so for the cameras, these are quite good cameras and comparable in terms of the outputs. So you get more saturation and higher video resolution from the Samsung Galaxy A52, but more flat and more details in the photos from the Redmi Note 11 Pro. I'd say the Galaxy wins here again. Battery life is quite similar when you compare these smartphones, especially when you max out their display refresh rates, 120 and 90 Hz here. The Redmi gives you a 5000 mAh battery, while the Galaxy here gives you a 4500 mAh battery capacity. Where things get interesting is getting a 67 watt charger within the box from the Redmi Note 11 Pro, which charges this phone from 0 to 50% in 15 minutes. Now, from the box of the Galaxy A52, you get a 15 watt charger, but this device has support for 25 watt fast charging. Even with that faster charger, that would juice your device from 0 to 50% in 30 minutes, which is double the time it takes the Redmi Note 11 Pro. And that's a win for the Redmi. So the batteries here, this wins in this category. So if you are in the market for any of these smartphones and you wish to match the memory configuration, that's 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, the Redmi Note 11 Pro can be gotten in 3 colors, the Polo White, Graphite Grey and Star Blue for 157,000 naira, about $320. While the Samsung Galaxy A52 can be gotten in 4 colors, Awesome Black, Awesome White, Awesome Blue and Awesome Violet, everything awesome, for about 171,000 naira. That's roughly $350. And that's like 14,000 naira difference in price, about $25. For those who care, I got the 8 gigs of RAM variant of the Redmi Note 11 Pro for 170,000 naira. So if you decide to pay that extra $25 for the Redmi, you get just an extra 2 gigs of RAM for the same price of this device. Not really sure that's worth it for a lot of people. But guys, what do you think? For me, the Samsung Galaxy A52 wins my heart here. But you might want to check out my review on the Note 11 Pro. Might win yours. Cool that day.